Well, Russia claims it is using hypersonic missiles to attack Ukraine. The most recent reported attack was Sunday on a fuel depot in eastern Ukraine. It was the second day in a row Russia claims it used the weapon, which is capable of traveling at 5 times the speed of sound. Russia says it first used the missile to hit a weapons depot in western Ukraine on Saturday. The U.S. has not been able to confirm that claim, but if it's true, it would be the first time a hypersonic weapon has been used in combat. For more, let's bring in Mike Vikers. Mike is a former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under President Barack Obama. Mike, thanks very much for being with us. A lot to cover. I'd like to get your take, first of all, on the hypersonic missiles that Russia reportedly used against Ukraine over the weekend. The U.S. has not been able to confirm Russia's claims of using those weapons, but what would be the significance of this if what Russia claims is true?
Well, this is really like a gorilla beating his chest. I mean, the weapon is not very useful in Ukraine, and it's more, I think, a signal to the West of what Russian capabilities could be if used against them. U.S. naval ships, for example, or air bases in NATO. The hypersonic weapon in this particular case is about 1,200-mile range, carries a 1,000-pound warhead, can be either nuclear armed or conventional armed. And hypersonic's a bit misleading. It means from 5 times the speed of sound to 15 times. This particular weapon is about 10 times, or 7,700 miles an hour. Its big feature is that it can maneuver a lot. Other weapons go much faster, ballistic missiles, but this one maneuvers a lot and therefore can evade air defenses. But in terms of Ukraine, it's just another bomb. I mean, it has little difference from the artillery or other missiles that they're shelling, indiscriminately shelling Ukrainian population centers with.
Yeah, given what we have seen, Mike, with respect to that, we've seen, for instance, medical facilities targeted, a maternity hospital targeted. What do you see as potentially the next phase of escalation here for the Russian military, and how do you see Ukrainian resistance sort of adjusting to those Russian tactics?
Yeah, so there's really 2 wars going on right now. On the military-to-military war, Ukraine is clearly winning. By U.S. estimates, reportedly, Russia has already suffered 7,000 killed in action and usually 3 times that many wounded in action. The Ukrainians estimate twice that much. Now, by comparison, in 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had 7,000 killed in action. Russia's had that in 4 weeks. So Ukraine is clearly winning in terms of defeating Russian maneuver forces. What Putin has been doing since is shelling Ukrainian population centers. You know, he struck 600 apartment complexes in Kharkiv alone, near the Russian border, and has essentially leveled Mariupol. And so my sense is that this is really the only option he has short of escalation and hoping to bludgeon the Ukrainians into submission. His escalation options would be to try to strike NATO territory, to interdict the supply lines that are supporting the Ukrainian resistance, but then he would bring NATO into the war if he did that. He could try a cyber attack against the West, the U.S. or the West, and particularly their economic infrastructure, given the sanctions that are imposed on the Russian economy, but that would bring counterstrikes. And then finally, he could escalate a bit in Ukraine with perhaps chemical weapons. They've used those in Syria and other places. He hasn't been shy about that, and he could certainly do that.
So the Wall Street Journal reports the Pentagon is shipping SA-8 Soviet-made missile defense systems to help bolster the Ukrainian military. How did the Pentagon acquire these systems, and can you explain the significance of them?
Sure. So anything that will bolster Ukrainian air defenses beyond the Stinger missile is a wonderful system. We used it in Afghanistan during the 1980s to shoot down a lot of Soviet helicopters and aircraft. But its ceiling is about 15,000 feet. And so other systems, much heavier systems that have to be towed by trucks or self-propelled, can acquire targets, up to 60,000 feet, or where airplanes fly, basically. And the SA-8's in that category. The S-300 that some NATO allies have. Old Soviet equipment is very useful. And then I can't say too much about how we acquire this, but as a former CIA officer, we have a real interest in understanding adversaries' equipment in case we have to go to war with them. And so we make an effort to obtain some of this equipment so we can study how to do countermeasures against it.
Yes, I know you can only say so much. The Wall Street Journal reports that the U.S. over the decades has acquired a small number of Soviet missile defense systems so that they can be examined by U.S. intelligence experts and help with training American forces. You talked a moment ago, Mike, about success on the battlefield that the Ukrainian forces have seen. Ukraine claims that 5 Russian generals have been killed so far in this war. If true, what might that suggest about Russian military organization and operation?
Yeah, so these are mostly 1-star generals and a 2-star. And what it suggests is that the leaders of these maneuver formations don't have a lot of confidence in their troops doing what they want them to do. And so they're forced to go to the front and lead by example to try to get them moving. Some of these generals reportedly had been talking on cell phones, which is a real no-no in combat zones. They can be geolocated and then targeted. So there's a range of actions for so many generals dying in combat in such a short period of time, from the difficulty they're having with their military operations to improper operational security.
So very quickly, Mike, just looking at what you just laid out there, would that suggest that Vladimir Putin grossly miscalculated what he was going to encounter in Ukraine?
Oh, absolutely. He way overestimated the capabilities of his forces. They performed dramatically more poorly than he thought. And the Ukrainians have been dramatically better than he thought. You know, he thought they could conquer the country in 2 days, and were almost a month into the war, and Ukraine's actually winning.
Mike Vikers. Mike, thanks very much for sharing your insights with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.